I'm Laura, also known as Fluffy K on Ravelry, Fluffy Kira on Twitter and Instagram. I have a blog at the Corner of Knit and Tea, and I also have an Etsy shop under the Stash Buckler Adventures in Yarn. I thought I'd podcast a little bit today because a bunch of my friends are podcasters and have been asking me to do it. So I thought I would just give it a whirl and see what happens, and who knows? We'll just see. Anyway, I thought I would call this the Corner of Knit and Tea after my blog and my passions right now. So I'll start with a little bit of tea. I am sipping today. It's a blackberry green tea, of course now the light's shining off of it, in my Tervis mug. I enjoy iced tea in the summer, and I received some blackberry tea from my sister from Tea Geschwender. It's a tea shop that she went to in Chicago. And the blackberry blend contains apple pieces, hibiscus blossoms, rose hips, elderberries, and blackberries. And what I did is a while ago, my husband was a real fan of drinking iced green tea, and so we have boxes and boxes and boxes in the pantry. So I have been mixing up big pitchers of iced tea for the weeks, for the weekdays when I go to work. And so I have been taking 5 or 6 green tea bags and then mixing it with some of the flavored teas to make them stretch a little further. And so I mixed up blackberry and green this week, and it is super tasty. I've had a few iced teas that I've tried and have not been so enamored of. One of my other favorites is a guava green. But I'm going to go ahead and try a few more, and I'll talk about them on the show. Each week I'll have something that I'm drinking. And I will go ahead and put a link to the tea and where you can get it, along with my review of it in the show notes. You can find show notes on the blog at the Corner of Knit and Tea, and this will also be posted over at YouTube. Which also brings me to one other point. Please, if you want to say hello or comment, ask questions, or just drop me a line, please leave some feedback on YouTube. Go ahead and leave a comment there, or if you want to leave a comment on my blog or contact me any number of other ways, please do. I'd love to meet you. If you have your own podcast, I'd love to hear about it and see what you're up to, because I really enjoy watching everyone and seeing what everyone's knitting and spinning. So I will move on to the next segment, which is knitting. First off, I'm going to show you what I'm wearing. This is a pattern called Terrain. It's by Janina Kallio, and I will show you real quick on the tablet. But I'll hold this a little bit closer so you can see. This is a very simple chevron pattern. It is I knit it in a self-striping yarn. This is Twisted Fiber Arts in Ariel, which is 100% superwash merino fingering weight yarn, and it does all the striping itself, so all I had to do was get started and knit. The other thing I found super interesting about this project is that she combines both garter and stockinette stitch. So if you see, some sections are garter and some are stockinette, and I just think that adds a really nice texture to the finished piece. I deviated a little from this pattern. It is actually written to be a scarf, but what I did was following another project that I really loved on Ravelry, grafted the ends together, so it is now an eternity loop, or I can loop it multiple times. And I really just love this so much. And I was going to show you again. This is a pattern by Janina Kallio, which is here. It's called Terrain, and as you can see, it is a scarf. It's meant to be a scarf, but the one that I fell in love with was by a Raveler. Her name is Hoopsis, or Hupsis, I don't know how she pronounces it, and she did hers in a Zauberball, and I absolutely fell in love with it, and so I followed her modifications, because it is just such a beautiful finished project. So that is what I'm wearing. Now we'll get to what's on my needles. I am working on a few things right now. I like to have a whole bunch of different things going. Right now I'm working on something called Little Sister Dress, and I will show you that one as well. That is designed by Tora Frotheth, And I will show you, let me just get this a little bit bigger. And it is a cute little dress. It's got garter ridges. Let me show you the picture a little bit bigger. It's got garter and stockinette ridges up at the top to kind of give it a little bit of texture. And then the body itself is just knit and stockinette with a few more ridges down at the very bottom. So that is what it looks like. The colors are really off on my screen. I'll have to experiment a little bit with the light to see if I can get it to look more natural. But I am knitting the dress in the 12-month size for my adorable niece Roxy, who I'm going to go see in a couple weeks. And I am using Knit Pick Stroll, which is a superwash fingering weight. And I'm using it in a color teal, and I just absolutely love this. I'm getting pretty close to the end, probably just a couple more inches, and then I'll find some cute buttons for the side piece here. And then it'll go with me to Chicago in 2 weeks, and hopefully I'll get some pictures of Roxy, my niece, wearing it. The other thing that I decided I might do to go with it is it's a cute little dress, and I assume in the fall maybe my sister can put her in a long-sleeved onesie, and then she can wear it as a dress in the fall, and then I figured in the future it might be more tunic length. But I figured if she got a little chilly, what I would do is use Alana Dacos's leg warmies pattern. It's little leg warmers. And I got this Knit Picks Felici. They don't sell this yarn anymore, but I believe they are going to bring out something sort of to replace it. Felici is a self-striping, and it's in the colorway Splash. And it is a couple greens and blues and a little bit of teal, and I think it will just offset this one really nicely. I think it'll just complement it. So that is what's on my needles currently. I am also getting ready to cast on a few new projects, so I thought I would talk about them. The first is a project for Camp Loopy. I don't know if you're familiar with that. The Loopy U is a fabulous online site for yarn, fiber. Now they do fabric, beads, so you can get kind of anything you need. Every summer they do a 3-month virtual camp, and what you do is you purchase yarn for 3 projects for the summer, for June, July, and August. You knit them within the month of, so you start on the 1st and you finish on the 30th or the 31st, and you post your pictures. And if you complete all 3 projects, at the very end there is a prize, which is usually a skein of yarn custom dyed for Camp Loopy. So, and usually there are a couple different colorways, so you get your choice. I have been playing along, and I've done the first 2 projects, and the final project in August is the one that I'll be showing you today. She usually has some prompts for that. Oftentimes it's a certain amount of yardage, or the first project this year was it had to be over 300 yards, no, maybe 400, and it had to be inspired by a book. So I actually knit some socks inspired by the Game of Thrones series. For this project, the only prompt is that it has to be 800 yards or more. So I decided to do a pattern that I have been wanting to do for a while. I noticed it when it first came out. It is the, hopefully this will work. It is the Double Knit Kraken Cowl by Craftling on Ravelry, and I will show it to you. It is exactly as advertised, a double knit Kraken cowl. And I will say that I fell prey to wanting to do the pattern in the colors that it was published in. You can always, if it's teal or black or charcoal gray, you can always find me wanting to do it in those colors. So I ordered a teal and charcoal gray. These are Cascade 220 Superwash. That shows the colors a little bit better. And I ordered those from the Loopy U. I have 2 skeins of each, and I'll be casting on for this cowl probably tonight or tomorrow. So we'll do that and hopefully finish that by August 31st. And that is hiding in my loop bag. which Loop is a yarn shop in London, and I had a friend who visited there several months ago now, late last year, and she brought this back to me as a souvenir, and I love putting some of my bigger projects in it and carrying it around because it reminds me of her and it's convenient. So that's the first project I'm going to cast on. The second project that I'm going to cast on is a pair of socks. I have been kind of doing a sock club along with Kate over at Stitch Addiction Podcast, and it's kind of a it's based on the idea that the Yarn Harlot started a few years ago, and if you don't read her blog, you definitely should. One year, she took 12 skeins of yarn and paired them with 12 patterns, and then she went ahead and put each yarn and pattern into a brown paper bag. So she had 12 brown paper bags for the year, and then each month she opened one of the bags and knit those socks and that pattern as her kind of personal sock club. So that was how Kate started hers, and I, of course, because I can never do anything according to plan, made some deviations in mine. For the most part, I have been trying to use old skeins from Stash, because I have an impressive stash of sock yarn. So I've been trying to pull out things that have been marinating in the stash for several years and knit socks out of them, and so I've done that several times. I also have not been exactly limiting myself to socks. For instance, this project was a sock club project. It was a skein of sock yarn that I did not want to knit into socks, but had been in my stash for many years. So I went ahead and knit another project out of it. And I would say at this point, I'm probably 50-50 or 60-40 on socks versus other objects through the year. I have knit a project every month. Most of them have come from Stash. And I am sort of working that along. But one of the reasons that I did not put everything in bags ahead of time is because, well, things come up. So about a month ago now, I went over to a friend's house, and a local friend, and we had a dye day because she has acid dyes and a fabulous dye room set up, and I dyed a sock blank at her house, and I was so excited about this sock blank that I knew that it was going to be my next pair of socks. So not all of my socks are coming from Deep Stash, some of them are coming from Newer Stash. So that project is right here, and I haven't started it yet, but I'm planning to cast them on this week. I usually have a sock project going at work each week. So this is the sock blank that I dyed, and basically I went through a variety of dyes. This end is violet, and then I put fiery red, a dark orange, and then golden yellow, and then bright yellow. So I basically tried to make it kind of a gradient. And if you haven't knit with a sock blank before, what it is it's two strands of sock yarn that have been knit up together on a knitting machine into a loose gauge so that you can get lots of dye in there. And you can knit the socks 2 at a time straight from the yarn blank. So basically I'll cast on the toe with the yellow here, and I will finish up the cuff up in the violet piece. And you can pull it apart and do the socks separately. Normally I do knit my socks 1 at a time, but this time I think I'm just going to grab a long circular needle and magic loop them and do them 2 at a time, because it just makes more sense from the sock blank. And I will say that I have very small feet. My feet are about 6.5, so these are going to be long knee socks. But I'm looking forward to them. I can't wait to see how they knit up. And I'm taking the train up to Chicago, so I will have lots of hours. It's about a 7-hour train ride here to there. So I will have 2 of those. So I'm hoping to spend some time really cranking on these socks while I'm there. And that is in my Knitting in the Heartland bag, which is a convention put on biannually, so every other year, by the local Sunflower Knitters Guild. So, and if I didn't say already, we live right outside of Kansas City, on the Kansas side. I actually work on the Missouri side, and we've been here about 6 years now. I actually hail from Los Angeles. I was born and raised out there. So being in the Midwest has been an adjustment. It also gives me an excuse to do lots of knitting, so I have enjoyed that part because, as you know, Los Angeles has no weather. It's about 70, 75 year-round, or at least that's what we like to say. So I believe that's all I have to show you for knitting. The other thing that I do is I am a spinner. My handspun is for sale in my shop, which is the Stash Buckler on Etsy. I mentioned that before. And I also really just enjoy spinning for myself as well. I've been spinning about 5 years now, and I feel like in the last couple years I've really sort of hit my stride and I'm making yarn that I'm really happy with. So I will show you a few things that I finished up just recently in the last couple weeks. The first is dyed by Southern Cross Fiber. That's David, and he's in Australia. I keep wanting to say Australia, New Zealand. He's in Australia. And this is Spellsow fiber, which is a little bit coarser, a little bit longer wool. This was the first time I had actually spun this fiber. And it, I think, will be very useful for something for outerwear. It's not quite soft enough to wear like right up against your neck or face, but I think this would make great mittens. The colorway was called Adrenaline Rush, and it is fiery yellows and oranges and then black, and I don't think it's coming across on this monitor. There's also some kind of eggplanty purples under there, kind of as the red goes into the black. Anyway, this is about 200 yards. It's a worsted weight, and like I said, I think it will make fabulous mittens, and that actually is for sale in my shop. I will put all the links to the fiber dyer and my shop in the notes, which can be found on the blog at the corner of Knit and Tea. The second thing I was going to show you was the spin from before that. This is also David of Southern Cross Fiber in Australia, and this is a South African superfine merino, and I have to say this may well be the softest thing I have ever spun. This was in the colorway Heartland, and there are browns and yellows and greens, and it just came out really squishy and soft. And this is about 300 yards, I would say, of a sport weight. This is also available in my shop, and again, I will put all the links in the notes so that you can see sort of all the specs on this, who the dyer is, and also where it's available if you're interested. So that brings me to my current spin. This was one of the ones that I had hoped to finish for Tour de Fleece, but didn't quite make it. So Tour de Fleece is an event that runs every July along with the Tour de France. The Tour de France Bike Race, they ride for about 3 weeks, and those of us with spinning wheels ride along at home. And we spin for the whole time, and I had a lot of fun this year. It's always my favorite time of summer because there's not a lot on TV, and I just spend 3 weeks doing nothing but spinning. I don't get a lot of knitting done, but I have a great time. And this is the last one that I was trying to finish but didn't quite make it, so I am working on it. It's dyed by Hello Yarn. It was one of her shop fiber updates, and it is called Sinister Gray Mists. It's a merino silk, and it's got whites and blues and grays and a little bit of brown, and it's just real kind of moody and dark, and I'm just absolutely loving it. And it's spinning up pretty thin. I would expect that it will be about a sport weight when I'm done. And this is the bobbin. I have finished about 3/4 of the fiber, so about 3 ounces, and I hope to finish the rest this evening and then maybe apply tomorrow, which means then it'll have a few days for washing, drying, and photos, so it would probably be available sometime next week. I do spin for myself, but lately I haven't had too many projects in mind, so I just grabbed a whole bunch of braids that I thought would be interesting spun up, and went ahead and spun them up, and I'm throwing them in the shop. I also have a local craft show that I do in November, so I sort of figure if nothing else, I'm building up inventory for when that happens. So I thought I would show you a couple of my up-and-coming spinning projects. I expect to finish that tomorrow night, which means on Monday I'll try and put something else on the wheel. And I am in another group on Ravelry that has a whole bunch of spinning challenges, and I don't know, sometimes the prompts are kind of fun to follow. I don't do it if it doesn't appeal to me, but this one was for summer's hot hues, and so I thought I would go ahead and try that, see what happened. And I received as a prize in the Tour de Fleece, I received a braid of fiber from Prairie House Fibers. She has a shop on Etsy, which I will link in the notes. And I received, it's a merino, and it is dyed in all kinds of crazy shades. It is hot pink and yellow and brown and gray, and it's a super fun braid. And while I do think that the gray will tone down some of the other colors, I thought this would be a fun one to spin for hot hues for summer. So I think that will be next on my wheel. Finally, sort of for the last thing that fiber that I'm gonna put on my wheel, I don't know if you watch Come Spin With Me or Come Knit With Me. It started with Come Knit With Me. Kim and Sam, they do sort of a virtual online knitting group podcast, and Kim is also a spinner. And they are hosting for the next 2 months Whippapalooza Extravaganzathon, which basically means pull the stuff that's half finished out of your stash, try and finish it, or pull it out and see how many objects you can finish during that time period. So I generally don't have a lot of knitting projects that are sort of laying on the needles, although I do have a few, and I'll discuss them in future episodes. But I do have some hand spun back from when I was a very early spinner that isn't plied quite the way I would like it. And I've been sitting and sort of looking at it and trying to figure out what to do with it. And it occurred to me that I could roll it up into a yarn cake and then try and reply it on the spinning wheel. And I thought, well, that would kind of be a work in progress. So the first thing that I selected was, this is a huge skein. It's 8 ounces. And it's leftovers and bits and pieces of a lot of my spins the first couple of years. A lot of times when people spin, they ply from 2 bobbins. So for instance, if I want to get a 2-ply, I would divide my fiber in half, spin half of it on each on a bobbin, and then I would go ahead and ply it together. Or at least that's how I used to. Oftentimes I find that when you split the fiber, you may spin it slightly differently, you may not quite split it quite evenly, so you end up with different amounts on the bobbins, and sometimes there's a little bit left over when you're done on one bobbin. And so what I did was I saved up all those leftovers probably for a year and a half, because I didn't know what to do with them. And then I had watched a few people spin them up into sort of big scrappy skeins, so I went ahead and did that for me. But you can see that in a lot of areas it's very loosely plied. I don't know if you can tell, but it's just not as pleasing to me as, say, this skein right here, which I just showed you, which has a lot more even ply. So I think you can see right at that point. So my plan is that I'm just going to put this back through on the wheel, and I anticipate it won't take me too long because it's already plied, so it'll just be kind of tightening it up. And I thought I would try that and see if I ended up with a yarn that I consider more usable. If I don't, then I don't, and I haven't really lost anything because I don't know what I was going to do with this anyway. But I was going to try that and see if that happened. So that's my goal for this week, in which case I will show it to you next week, hopefully finished. And I will take pictures and post them on Instagram as well, so that you can really get a good feel for what this skein looks like, and then you can kind of put them next to each other and see what they look like in the before and after, or I can probably compare those shots for you. Anyway, I think that's about it for the first episode. Thank you for watching. As I said, please drop me a line, say hi, leave a comment, tell me about your podcast, either here on YouTube, or if you're watching this on the blog, please leave it on the blog. Keep an eye on the blog. I do tea reviews once or twice a week, and then I also have other updates with all kinds of things that you can buy or make. And I really try and combine knitting and tea, sort of the intersection of the two, and sometimes some spinning too, because can't leave that out. And I guess that's about it. I hope you have a good week. I will read all the comments and follow up and see, and maybe do another episode next weekend. So until I see you again, happy knitting, happy spinning, and enjoy! Bye!